see to work, get more done, unlock more time, more money, and more freedom.
Join us as we explore the challenges and power of making work visible. Welcome to the Visible Workplace Podcast with Dr. Tom Raleigh.
Now, let's get into today's episode. Well, hello and welcome to today's episode of The Visible Workplace. My name is Dr. Tom Raleigh. Great to have you along. We have a discussion around a critical aspect of business that often goes overlooked, or it's something that comes up much later in a business's journey to success than it should. What am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about mapping your customer journey. Now, this is an interesting topic because it is forcing you to look at the journey that your customer goes through, not just at the beginning when they first hear about you, and not just through the sales process, but also what happens next, what happens after they buy. And the documentation of this has many advantages. So we're going to look at that today. But what I see is that most businesses do not have this. They do not have an overview of the journey that their customers are going on. And it's difficult because it means they can't see. Now, obviously, the topic of the podcast is being able to see. So this is very critical. So what is a customer map or mapping out a customer journey? Well, it is a step-by-step experience of all of the things that your customers will go through in order to find you. And then what happens after they find you? What pages do they see? What phone calls they receive? What text messages? What do they do in order to learn about whether your business is the right one for them? And let's say it is, they're like, yep, you know what? I want to do business with you. How does that sale get made? And then when the sale gets made, what happens next? Are they then handed over to another team? Are they sent emails? Are they, well, I don't know what does happen. But we're talking about drawing all of this out. And when you do that, suddenly you can see. And you may find this might be a little awkward, but you're like, oh dear, this is broken, and this is broken, and this is broken. And what you're going to notice is that there are some things that are going on that are critical, that must happen in order for your customer to find out about you. Let's say you're advertising. Let's say it's not working. Oh dear, now no one is finding out about your business. This is a problem. This is a critical step that should be rectified. Next up, let's say now you fix that and you come and you look at, well, how are they finding out about you? Are they sending you a text message? Are they on WhatsApp? Are they calling your business? Are they going to a web page and sending a contact us form? Are they buying something? What happens next? And in order to track those, once again, you can look at them, say, hey, are these critical? And if they are and they're not working, guess what? Now you've got a next step in order to fix. But you can see that we have an advertising and then into a sales experience. And let's say that they do then buy. Let's imagine that it's on a call. They jump on a call with you and they're like, yep, this is going on, this problem, what can you do? And you're like, okay, great. I know what this problem is. Here's what could happen for you when we fix these problems. Do you want it? And they say, yes. How much is it? And you say, give the price. And they say, yes, let's do it. And they become a customer. And then what happens? Well, their customer journey continues. And we want to draw that out and actually have them go, okay, well, what happens when they buy? Well, they do this. That we create a customer account for them, or we apply a team member to say, hey, you're in charge of this. And we need these details, or we need this information. And they're going to send a form, or maybe there's another call. Don't know. But you should be drawing this out. And then you can say, all right, well, what happens next? Well, they've completed the work. What do we do with them? Well, what happens next for them? I don't know. Perhaps in your business, they then have another problem, a maintenance problem, or a desire for something more. And you're like, hey, do you want to have this? And they might say yes, and you can sell them something else. And once again, that customer journey continues. But this could be held up here in the mind, and you're just imagining it. But when you draw it out, like literally drawing it out, a couple of interesting things happen. You can start to see the links between them. You can see what's working and you can see the opportunities that could come. So let's talk a little bit about how do you do this? Well, we're talking about drawing here, and there's really good tools for drawing. You probably know them, pen and paper. Yes, pen and paper, but you could also have a digital version of this, like a iPad with a pen that you can draw on, or you could go to a whiteboard and actually draw this out on a whiteboard. This works really well. And finally, you could have a digital whiteboard if you're got a vibe board or something like that, and you draw on it and it turns it into digitization. It's pretty cool. But those four methods, pen and paper, iPad and pencil, whiteboard and whiteboard pen, or digital whiteboard, all of them have the same purpose, which is allowing you to draw. And you can think about it and go, well, where did they start? Well, they started by finding out about a podcast or an ad or an article or word of mouth. And then they came in, and what happened next? And that's the key question that I want you to ask. What happens next? What happens next? They do this, they do that, and draw them out. The arrows between them. Maybe there's a decision they've got to choose. Do I buy? Do I not buy? What happens if they buy? What happens if they don't buy? And you can have a little box with two arrows, one for yes, they bought, and one for no, they didn't. And this is really quite an insightful exercise. You might get your teams together and go, okay, we're going to draw out our customer journey and get up on the whiteboard and what happens next. And people call out the answers and you're like drawing arrows, and then you will see what's going on. But what you might have after drawing it out is a bit like a rough draft. It's like, oh, okay, well, that was a bit messy. Arrows might be going everywhere. And so what you might then like to do is perhaps bring it into a more refined version, something that flowchart software does really well. My preferred one is Lucidchart, and this is very easy to use. You just drag around shapes and automatically has little arrows that you can pull across to other shapes. And in this process of going from the whiteboard or the pen and paper into a more formal experience, you will have the opportunity to clarify the exact steps further and draw in things that may have been forgotten or clarify the exact arrows. But this second step really is helpful, not only in that it then looks much cleaner, but also that you are able to fill in missing steps. If anything got missed, it's like, oh, actually, there is this other thing. We haven't even thought about that. And in it comes. So going from rough draft to a final version using something like Lucidchart or Microsoft Visio or even Figma if you want to. Figma I found too hard. Try Lucidchart if you're not sure. And this then gives you something that you have a final version. When a team member asks, well, what are we working on? Or what happens next? You can point them to that file. It's very clean. So now we've gone from rough draft pen and paper to final draft electronic. What happens next? Well, one thing you could consider is that idea of like, is this working? And actually going through and auditing all of the steps. And there's two things to consider. How important is this? Is it critical? Like without this working, our business falls apart. Is it important? Like it is, it's not critical. Business doesn't fall apart, but it certainly makes a big difference. Or is it a nice to have? And so we've kind of got that critical, important, nice to have rating. And then secondly, well, what's its current condition? What condition is it in right now? Is it working? Sweet, awesome. Is it kind of working? Like it's partially working. Bits are working, but bits are not. And that's okay too. We're like, okay, we're just going to say that that's partially working. Or is this thing flat out broken? And you're like, okay, this is not working. It's meant to be working. But this then allows you to go through and look at all the pieces and say, okay, this is critical and not working. We probably should fix this first. as opposed to something that's working and nice to have. Well, if we've got excess time and we really want to be very thorough, then yes, we could go ahead and maybe document how that works. But if you do these in the wrong order, well, you can see the consequences. The business might have a lot of things going on, but if it's not the critical and they're not working, then we've got big problems. Now, I want to talk about one more thing just before we continue, and that is when you're doing this, you will be very tempted to draw out right back at that first step what could be happening or what should be happening. And I'd encourage you at this point to not do that. Make sure you just draw out what is happening, like what's actually up and running, because very tempting to start adding in your planning exercises, things that should or could or would great to have. It's like, oh, wouldn't it be awesome if, and you draw it in, but it's not actually happening right now. And the problem with this is now you've got confusion. You're like, oh, hang on, I thought that was done. I thought that was up and running. And it's like, well, no, we haven't even done that yet. Why is it on the map? Okay, take it off the map. And the things that should be on your map are the things that are in existence right now. Now, does that mean that you can't add something later? No, absolutely not. You might clearly see once all the critical things are working, and you're like, oh, great, we've got all these things fixed. Our customer is going on a very successful journey, going through this step by step by step. All of those critical steps are working. What do we do now? Guess what? Now you can add in a planned exercise and bring that in. And it would start off perhaps as important and not working. And as it got built out, it moves from important to working. And it appears on your customer map. So just want to bring that up. All right, let's just have a quick review here. So we went through and we drew out a rough draft of everything that is happening in the business. Then we clarified it with a nice electronic version on Lucidchart. Then we audited and went through and said what's critical, what's working, what's important, what's not working, going through for those two categories. Is it working and is it important? And now, guess what you've got? Now you've got a approach. You've got a plan for what needs to be worked on in your business. Now, what do I do with that? Okay, well, I look at it and go, all right, well, let's build a magic board for this one little part. Whether that's sales or ads, or whether that's the fulfillment and the delivery of the service, whatever is critical and broken, let's start there and get that one system working, that one magic board up and running. And whether it's one that just has to be built once and it's one and done, or whether it's something that gets built and then gets run each time it needs to be used, the important thing is that we get that one thing working. And when and only when that one thing is working, then we can move to the next piece. And if you're wondering which order, let's say that you've got a whole bunch of things that are critical and broken. Well, where would you start? Well, I like to start with sales. Sales needs to happen. And you could argue that you should start with fulfillment and whatever the service delivery is. And if that's not working, then, well, what does it matter if you're not selling? But a long time ago, I was giving this coach of ours was saying, hey, why don't you just get started and sell it? And then when they buy, then deliver. And I thought that was a really cool thing. So sales first. And then, well, it's no good having a sales experience when nobody knows about it. So then advertising, how are we going to get people to it? Are we going to do content posts? Are we going to send text messages? Are we going to pay for ads? Are we going to whatever it is to get people to our sales experience? And then when they buy, well, this means trusting yourself that you're able to fulfill on what you promise. But when they buy, then you can go ahead and fill that last piece. Now, you could argue about ads then sales or sales then ads. Really, they both need to be operational in order for it to work. If you've got ads to a sales process that doesn't work, well, you won't make any sales. If you've got a sales process that doesn't have any traffic, any people coming to it, then, well, it won't work. So both of those need to be working. And then when you're making sales, great. You can pick up the fulfillment piece, the delivery piece, and get that working. So that's an order for you in order to consider. But what I wanted you to catch here is that we're going to fix one thing first, looking at what needs to be worked on, and then getting it working, and then moving to the next thing. Not trying to fix 18 things at once, because you will end up not fixing any. But one thing working. My recommendation, use a magic board. Get the results that you want. What results have to be in place for this system to be working, for this piece to be working? And then going, all right, well, what steps have we got to do? What instructions, what work has to be done in order to create that results? But this map of your customer journey has many advantages. It allows you to see the overall customer journey. It allows you to audit where all of those pieces are so that you can get the broken ones fixed, particularly the critical ones. And then finally, it allows you to have a plan of attack and go, this piece first, this piece next, this piece third. And each of those gets up and running before you move on to the next. All right, that's all I got for you around mapping customer journeys. Thanks so much for joining me on this podcast. If you want some more help around this, then we do have a product for you called, funnily enough, Mapping Customer Journeys. Head over to systemio.dev/store, systemio.dev/store, and grab the product there called Mapping Customer Journeys. That will give you the skill sets and the exact steps that we've talked about today to go through and get this done. Draw out your customer journey and then get to work fixing the steps so that your business gets up and running. You make more money, you make more profits, you have more time. Thanks so much for joining me. Look forward to seeing you in the next episode of The Visible Workplace. See you then.
Thanks for tuning into the Visible Workplace podcast. Subscribe for more productivity tips and share with friends. We love your feedback, so please rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. For more tips and tools, visit www.magicboards.io. Thanks again, and see you next episode. Disclaimer: the information and ideas discussed in this episode are general in nature and do not take into account your specific circumstances. You should seek specialist advice for any medical, financial, emotional, mental, or other difficulties that you are facing with appropriate specialists and professionals so that they can apply your specific circumstances and give you the required advice.